This meeting is held in compliance with Brown Act rules relating to telephonic and video conference meetings. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-630-1420. SCAG offers free interpretation services. For members of the public needing information in another language, please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, June 6, 2024. Remember D-Day. The meeting of the Transportation Committee is now called to order. Larry, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Please join me as we salute the flag that represents our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I read that right. Okay. I will now open the public comment period of the meeting. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 5th, 2024?
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair. Yes, we did receive one comment for the Transportation Committee after yesterday's posted agenda. After yesterday's deadline. That comment will be provided to the members of the Transportation Committee after the end of today's SCAG meetings. I will also note that we did receive one comment before the deadline, which was transmitted to the members of the TC. All of you have received that. And other than those two, that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? All right. Tim's here. Excuse me while we switch some seats.
Hey, thank
You're welcome.
Where are we?
Right.
We just
closing public comment, and then we'll go to the further.
Okay. So go ahead and close it. Okay. Okay, this time I'd like to go ahead and close the public comment and turn it over to you, Ruben.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of housekeeping items to note on your posted agenda. The first is that although agenda item number 1, which is the approval of minutes, reflects the February minutes, that was a typographical error. We're actually asking the TC to approve the minutes from April 4th. There's no legal consequence to that typographical error on the agenda. Additionally, I've learned that there is a typo on the public release start date for agenda item number 3 under the executive summary portion. The executive summary indicates July 11th, 2024. The correct public release start date is July 12th, 2024. The body of the report has the correct public release start date, but we wanted to note this for the record. happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, at this time, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on consent? Not seeing any. Are there any members of the Transportation Committee who wish to speak on consent or would like to pull an item from consent? Didn't hear from anyone. Not seeing any hands up. Oh, we do have a
Approval of
hand up.
consent.
Mr. Navarro, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I move.
I'm sorry.
I'd like
Oh,
to-
it's a motion. Okay, all right. Can I get us McKellen in a second? All right, let's go and do a roll call vote.
Brian Bergson. Russell Betts,
Yes.
Daniel Brotman,
Yes.
Art Brown,
Aye.
Jeanette Burns, Ross Chun,
Aye.
Denise Delgado, Andrew Doe,
Aye.
Jonathan Dumitru,
Yes.
John Dutray,
Yes.
James Gaisley,
Aye.
Jason Gibbs,
Aye.
Kurt Hagman, Jan Harnick,
Yes.
Laura Hernandez,
Hernandez, yes.
Lauren Hughes Leslie,
Yes.
Heather Hutt,
Oh, there I am. Thank you.
Mike Judge,
Yes.
Fred Jung,
Aye.
Trish Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Krikorian, Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis,
Yes.
You're in charge.
Malcolm Lilienthal,
Yes.
Richard Loa, Clint Lowermore, Ken Mann,
Yes.
Steve Monos,
Aye.
Ray Marquez,
Yes.
Larry McCallan,
Yes.
Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Linda Molina, Carol Moore,
Aye. Moore, aye.
Juan Munoz, Ara Najarian, Maria Navafrolik,
Aye.
Frank Navarro,
Yes.
Sharona Nazarian,
Nazarian, yes.
Gil Rebolar, Ed Reese,
Yes.
Celeste Rodriguez,
Yes.
Crystal Ruiz, Ali Saleh,
Yes.
Steve Sanchez,
Aye.
Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Suli Sorrow,
Aye.
Marty Siminoff,
Yes.
Ward Smith, Jose Luis Salache, Wes Speak, Karen Spiegel, Cynthia Sternquist,
Yes.
Michael Vargas,
Yes.
Was that a yes for Spiegel? Sternquist.
Sternquist.
Scott. Got it. Thank you. Scott Voigt. Donald Wagner.
Wagner, aye.
Thank you. Colleen Wallace.
Yes.
Alan Wapner.
Yes.
Thomas Wong. Thomas Wong. Thank you. The motion passes 42 in favor and 0 against.
Can you show Brian Bergson as an aye?
Thank you. Received.
Like to Lorimore, aye.
And Salacha and I as well.
And Salache.
Yes.
Thank you. Received.
Very good. Okay, we're now on action items. Agenda item 8, which is the draft 2025 FTIP, and draft Connect SoCal 2024 Amendment 1, released for public review and comment. And we have two presenters, Augustine Barajas, Senior Regional Planner, and Nancy Lowe, Associate Regional Planner. Welcome. Good morning, members of the Transportation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present this item. My name is Agustin Barajas. I'm a Senior Regional Planner in the Integrated Planning and Programming Department. And this presentation will be on the draft 2025 FTIP and Connect SoCal Amendment 1. And if you're wondering why are we amending the plan when it was just recently approved a few weeks ago, the reason is to support project changes that came about from the 2025 FTIP. Okay. So I'll be going over the role of the FTIP in regional planning and then point to some key highlights from the draft 2025 FTIP. After that, my colleague Nancy Lowe will go over Connect SoCal Amendment 1 and present the next steps for the two joint documents. And the two joint documents are being developed concurrently so that and follow the same schedule so that when approved, the 2025 FTIP is consistent with Connect SoCal. The purpose of this item is to request that this committee approve a recommended action to authorize the draft release of the draft 2025 FTIP and Connect SoCal Amendment 1 in July for a 30-day public comment review period. And ideally, we would have brought this item to you in July prior to the draft release. But because July is dark and there are no scheduled TC meetings or RC meetings in August, we're bringing this item to you earlier with an overview of the two draft documents so that you might feel comfortable in approving the recommended action. The FTIP, or Federal Transportation Improvement Program, is a program of transportation projects that serves as a kind of implementation tool or a short-range plan for the longer range RTP or Connect SoCal. It includes projects that are listed in Connect SoCal that are receiving funding and that are advancing towards implementation in the next 6 years. So SCAG, as the MPO for the region, is required by federal and state statutes to prepare an FTIP. SCAG prepares a new FTIP with subsequent amendments, a new FTIP every 2 years, and then there's many subsequent amendments in between. And the projects that need to be included in the FTIP are projects that are receiving federal funds, projects that require a federal action, or projects that are regionally significant. And by regionally significant, it means that the project can impact regional travel, or can impact air quality emissions. So it's important to stress that the process for developing the FTIP as well as programming or including projects in the FTIP is very much a bottom-up process. And it starts with project lead agencies sponsoring projects, gathering all the project information on those projects, and then providing that to the county transportation commissions, who then review and submit to SCAG for SCAG to analyze, review, make sure all the requirements are met, and then submit to state and federal transportation agencies for their, I'm sorry, was there a question? Oh, for their approval. So SCAG work throughout this process, SCAG work closely in full coordination and close consultation with CTC staff to ensure that projects are programmed accurately and to resolve any issues that come up with requirements or funding changes and things like that. Key requirement for including projects in the FTIP is, of course, consistency with the plan. So projects in both the plan and the program must be consistent in scope, cost, and schedule, and in particular, capital projects that are modeled, since those are scrutinized more closely in both the plan and the RTP. And one feature of the FTIP that facilitates frequent changes and makes it a dynamic document is that it can be amended frequently. And this is necessary to keep up with the pace of project changes that occur when projects are being refined more and being funded. So regular FTIP amendments are part of our process and how we work with the CTCs to make sure projects are on track to keeping their schedule and receiving their funding. And just to emphasize how often or how frequent the FTIP is amended, the 2023 FTIP, which we're currently programming off of, was approved 18 months ago, and it's been amended already 29 times. So it's about 1 to 2 amendments a month that we're reviewing and submitting for approval. The 2025 FTIP is made up of a mixture of transportation sources. As you can see on this slide, the total of the 6 years of the FTIP sums up to $38.8 billion. And as you can see, the breakdown is made up of federal, state, and local sources. And you'll note that on the pie chart that the majority of that funding, more than half, 55%, is made up of local funding. And that could mainly be attributed to counties with sales tax measures that support transportation funding. The breakdown of the 2025 FTIP by investment categories, as you'll see here, is highway and road investment makes up 22.9 billion of that 38.8 billion, and transit investments make up 16 billion of the total 38.8 billion. So that there's approximately 1,128 projects that are programmed in the 2025 FTIP, and that the total funding that make up those 1,128 projects is the 38.8 billion. And one thing I wanted to stress in these figures is that if you'll see the operations and maintenance proportion in both highway and transit is relatively small. It's 21% in highways, and it's 11% in transit. And what I wanted to highlight here is that the FTIP does not reflect 100% of transportation investments in the SCAG region. So there are lots of minor transportation improvements that are 100% locally funded that would not meet the criteria for needing to be programmed in the FTIP. So that figure isn't truly reflective of how much operations and maintenance is being invested. And we mentioned that because, to avoid the misinterpretation that, the region is building all this capacity and capital projects without allocating sufficient funding for operations and maintenance. So SCAG continues to advance its commitment on addressing equity, inclusion, and diversity in Southern California. So in the 2025 FTIP, additional metrics related to equity were included as part of the project input that was received from the county transportation commissions. And that input was included to try to evaluate how FTIP investments could be potentially impacting vulnerable populations in the SCAG region. And by impacts, I just want to note that they could be burdensome impacts or beneficial impacts. So it's not necessarily always negative impact, right? So based on the metrics that were responded to and the data, GIS data that's available to us, SCAG staff prepared an analysis and found that approximately 80% of all the projects were found to be in, near, or to serve a disadvantaged community. And more than half of the capital of the highway miles were found to in, near, or to serve a disadvantaged communities in the SCAG region. And of that, 2/3 of the transit service miles were found to be in, near, or to serve a disadvantaged community. And we think that capturing these metrics And the analysis provides us an incremental step in providing SCAG, not only SCAG, but our partner transportation agencies with additional information to help make more informed decisions on transportation and investments. And more details on this analysis can be found in the technical appendix once the draft is released. Transportation conformity is a key requirement, and it's a comprehensive federal requirement that must be met for the FTIP to be approved and for projects to be funded and advanced. And what it means essentially is that federal funding and federal approvals are going towards transportation investments that help the SCAG region meet its air quality goals. And to meet transportation conformity, as you can see on the slide, these 5 tests must be met, must be adhered to. And the bulk of the analysis that's included in the 2025 FTIP is specifically to address transportation conformity and to prepare analysis for each of these individual tests. More information, the specific analysis can be found in the technical appendix as well. And just for your information, a similar item with the more specific details on transportation conformity is also being presented today at the Energy and Environment Committee for recommended approval as well. And with that, I'll conclude this overview of the FTIP, and I'll hand it over to Nancy, who will go over the amendment portion of Connect SoCal. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustine. My name is Nancy Lowe, and I serve as an Associate Regional Planner at SCAG. For the remainder of the slides, I'll be going over the draft Amendment 1 to the Connect SoCal 2024. As Augustine had mentioned, the reason we are here today is because the 2025 FTIP and the Connect SoCal 2024 must be consistent with each other. We are in this set of proposals, we are not changing any strategy, but instead aligning to reflect project changes. Those changes could mean additions of projects, deletion of projects, as well as other modifications like schedule and scope. And again, the importance of this is to ensure that projects remain eligible for funding and move forward in the process. In summary, we received 348 project modifications from CTCs, and a sample of those are listed in front of you. Through staff analysis, with the amendment that the plan will continue to meet financial constraints, meet all 5 tests of transportation conformity, as well as remain compliant with SB 375 as we continue to meet greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. In conclusion, I'd like to go over next steps. As a reminder, we are dark in July. So as you're all enjoying your summer breaks and with your approval today, as well as regional councils, both drafts will be released for a 30-day public comment period starting in early July, and during which 2 public hearings will also be hosted by staff. In September, we hope to be back in front of you with the proposed final, which would include comments received as well as responses to those comments. We also anticipate federal approval of the transportation conformity determinations in December of 2024. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, your consideration. If there are any questions at this time, we would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Augustine. Before turn it over to the Transportation Committee members for questions or comments, I'd like to ask if there's any member of the public who wish to speak on this item. Okay, not seeing any hands. Okay, any in the room? Not seeing any in the room. Do we have any? I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my question is, how many projects are in Riverside County that is under this FTIP, and how many disadvantaged communities is it?
I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but we can certainly follow up with you after the meeting. Thank you.
Alrighty, did I miss anyone else in the room? No, no one virtually. Be happy to entertain a motion. Okay. Alrighty, do a roll call vote.
Brian Bergson,
Yes.
Russell Betts,
Aye.
Daniel Brockman,
Yes.
Art Brown. Aye. Jeanette Burns. Ross Chun,
Yes.
Denise Delgado. Andrew Doe. Jonathan Dumitru.
Yes.
John Dutray.
Yes.
James Gaisley.
Aye.
Jason Gibbs.
Aye.
Kurt Hagman. Laura Hernandez.
Aye.
Lauren Hughes Leslie.
Aye.
Thank you. Received. Mike Judge.
Yes.
Heather Hutt. Fred Jung.
Fred Jung, aye.
Trish Kelly.
Yes.
Paul Krikorian. Linda Krupa.
Yes.
Bridget Lewis.
Yes.
Malcolm Lilienthal.
Yes.
Richard Loa. Clint Lowermore.
Aye.
Ken Mann.
Ken Mann, yes.
Steve Manos.
Yes.
Ray Marquez.
Yes.
Larry McCallan.
Yes.
Marcia McLean.
Yes.
Linda Molina.
Yes.
Carol Moore.
Carol Moore, aye.
Juan Munoz.
Aye.
Ara Najarian. Maria Nava-Frolik.
Aye.
Frank Navarro.
Yes.
Sharona Nazarian.
Nazarian, aye.
Thank you. Gil Rebelar. Ed Reese.
Yes.
Celeste Rodriguez.
Yes.
Crystal Ruiz. Once again, was that Crystal Ruiz? Ali Saleh.
Yes.
Steve Sanchez.
Sanchez, aye.
Tim Sandoval.
Yes.
Suli Sorrow.
Aye.
Marty Siminoff.
Yes.
Thank you. Got it. Ward Smith. Jose Luis Salache.
Yes.
Wes Speak.
Aye.
Karen Spiegel.
Aye.
Cynthia Sternquist.
Yes.
Michael Vargas.
Yes.
Scott Voigt. Donald Wagner.
Wagner, aye.
Colleen Wallace.
Yes.
Alan Wapner.
Yes.
Thomas Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 47 in favor and 0 against.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just a few housekeeping matters. The motion was by Marquez and Hagman. I just want to confirm that for the clerk. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
And also because we're in a hybrid environment, it would be very helpful if those in the room, when you speak, to please just say your name. So for example, before the motion was made, it was Member Wallace who made a comment or asked a question. That way everyone on the screen knows who in the room is speaking. And then if you're not speaking or voting, please do remember to keep yourself muted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we go ahead and move on to agenda item 9, 2024 SCP Active Transportation and Safety Guidelines and Call for Projects. If I can ask Rachel Ohm, you are
Hello.
Senior Regional Planner. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. Again, my name is Rachel. I'm a senior regional planner. As our SCAG Active Transportation Lead, it is my pleasure to bring this exciting funding opportunity to the committee for your review and approval. This is for the 2024 Sustainable Communities Program, Active Transportation and Safety Call. Yeah, remote support, one moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I can move ahead. Okay, to start off with an overview of the Sustainable Communities Program, this has been an effort by SCAG to provide resources and technical assistance to our local jurisdictions. The goal of the SCP is to really support Connect SoCal implementation while also meeting the needs of local communities. So following the adoption of Connect SoCal 2024, the SCP is hosting a call for applications focused on active transportation and safety. This call is anticipated to have 10.4 million that is funded through the State Active Transportation Program, Cycle 7 regional funds, and also a Safe Streets and Roads for All federal grant. I know many of you have likely been tracking the governor's budget and connecting with your stakeholders. So this amount is pending the governor's final budget and the final state ATP funding availability. So staff have certainly been tracking this very closely. This call will solicit applications for two types of projects. The first one is the development of plans, really emphasizing the safety and improvement of active transportation in our communities. Some examples include active transportation plans, bike and ped master plans, first last mile plans looking to connect to and from transit, and also safe routes plans such as safe routes to school or safe routes for seniors. As the funding source for this call is the ATP, one of the requirements is that these plans must benefit disadvantaged communities. Definitions include SCAG's priority equity communities and other metrics identified by the ATP, such as Cal Enviro Screen, Healthy Places Index, etc. There will be up to 500,000 available per plan. There is no minimum, and applicants can submit multiple applications. On screen, you'll see a screenshot of a plan that may seem very familiar, as we had folks from the city of Montebello come in April to share about the first last mile plan, which was funded by the Connect SoCal 2020 call, also focused on active transportation and safety. The other type of project that will be soliciting application are quick builds. If you recall, in February, we had Margot from LADOT share about quick build projects in the city of LA. So these projects, they include a variety of elements, including engagement with the community to help inform the design, and then the actual implementation, so getting infrastructure on the ground of these quick builds. There's an evaluation period to ensure that the project is working as intended, and then opportunities to either maintain that project or make modifications, again, based on community feedback or just staff observations of how the project is working out in the field. This project type, so quick builds, will have up to 900,000 available, no minimum as well. And then again, applicants can submit multiple applications. Wanted to share, we have an ongoing project. It's very exciting in the city of Santa Monica along East Pico Boulevard. The city is collaborating with staff in designing and getting ready to implement a quick build project, also funded through the 2020 call for projects of active transportation and safety. Just wanted to share a couple examples of these mobility goals in action. So just a few examples of our quick builds. So in 2022, City of Long Beach, on the left-hand side photo, that's the SCAG kit of parts in action. You see there's some curb extension artwork and some other elements of the kit of parts. And that was used to engage with the community and then implement a quick build on the right-hand side in the Washington neighborhood of artistic curb extensions. Another example is in the city of Calexico. The city partnered with SCAG to pilot a pedestrian plaza in their downtown area. So this is along Rockwood Avenue. The city blocked off about a block of Rockwood Avenue to create a pedestrian plaza, and also received additional grant funding from the Bloomberg Foundation to have artistic murals on the ground. So you'll see on the right-hand side, there's residents and patrons checking out the space and enjoying the artwork. And then a final example, very recent, the city of Glendale earlier this year The city is again partnering with SCAG to implement a quick build along Brand Boulevard, going from primarily vehicular space along Brand Boulevard and then testing out designs for a parking protected bike lane and curb extensions, which you'll see have really fun, colorful elements to bring placemaking along Brand Boulevard. So the development of these guidelines was a very collaborative effort where SCAG staff partnered with county transportation commissions to get feedback and also extensive community engagement. So in March, we put out a survey to our constituents to learn about what are the priorities for our local communities and also what have been some challenges to actually submitting applications. Then the draft guidelines were released in April for public comment. We got great engagement again from the county transportation commissions and also a lot of local jurisdictions. Throughout this whole time period, we've had a lot of presentation and announcements at County Transportation Commission TAC, technical advisory committees, also Council of Government meetings, and also other various working group meetings. And a lot of these presentations led to follow-up one-on-one meetings with local jurisdictions where we answered questions about how the Sustainable Community Program works, and also just to provide feedback and brainstorm around project ideas. And then throughout this whole process, we've also been putting out emails, newsletters to alert folks about these engagement opportunities and just to keep putting out engagement and awareness of this upcoming call for projects. With the adoption of the guidelines and eventual release of the call, we're going to have continued engagement. So we still have several presentations and announcements at meetings lined up, which we anticipate will lead to more one-on-one meetings. We'll continue those email newsletters to keep people in the loop. And then once the call for project opens, we'll host virtual workshops so that potential applicants know everything they need to prepare for an application and also have the opportunity to ask any questions. And then staff will also host office hours where potential applicants can, again, ask questions about this whole application process, but also get feedback on potential project ideas. And if those office hours are not working with schedules, we're more than happy to find another time to meet. Wanted to go over some key dates. So today we're here requesting for a recommendation to move to Regional Council for approval of the guidelines and authorizing staff to open the call for projects. We anticipate this call will open sometime in summer of 2024. And then following the opening of the call, we'll hold those virtual workshops that were mentioned. And potential applicants will have several months to prepare their applications. So we anticipate the call would close in fall of 2024. We'll be coming back to this committee and council for review of those, the outcome of those applications in spring of next year, so April 2025. And following that state ATP schedule, we anticipate we'd have that final project selection in June of 2025. Appreciate you walking through this funding opportunity and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we go to Transportation Committee members, I'd like to ask if any members of the public wish to speak on this item. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. For your presentation. I'm Laura Hernandez. I'm representing City of Camarillo, Oxnard, and Port Hueneme. And one of the challenges that I've found in some of the quick build projects are the debate on safety of the curb extensions and the crosswalk art projects. There's a debate, it appears, there's a debate about the distraction that the art projects present to the community and to driver safety. I think the statements that I've heard are that, you know, the artwork is a distraction in that it slows down the driver, which is a good thing, but it can also be a distraction where it slows them down to the point where it causes accidents. Do we have data on that? Or do we have any safety performance information that we can take back to our communities? Because I'm all for the curb extensions and the crosswalk art. And so I'm trying to bolster my argument to do these kinds of things in our community and be helpful to have the data to support that.
Sure. So
I am not 100% sure if there's data specific around the distracted driving around artistic crosswalks, but I do know that the Bloomberg Institute has produced a report really focused on asphalt art and the role it has to help with safety. And they have tracked in terms of vehicles yielding to pedestrians and maybe around speeds. I don't know if there's that specific metric around distracted driving, but I can certainly take a look and follow up. I will also note the quick builds and then maybe the kit of parts engagement leading up to a quick build. That's a fantastic opportunity to test out an artistic crosswalk or curb extension to really pilot that out. And if it turns out it is creating a safety issue due to distracted driving, then there's an opportunity to shift to just the standard high visibility crosswalk with white paint. So I think that's where the quick builds are a really key tool.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve Sanchez, and then Suli Sorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. Does the grant apply to cities that perhaps have already approved some type of project? They just don't have the funding for it, or is it for new projects going forward? Should this be approved and going forward, or how does that work?
So this funding opportunity is eligible for any projects that have not yet started. So to put it simply, it wouldn't fund work that's already been completed, but if there's a project that needs funding in order to be implemented, that would be eligible.
Thank you.
Very good. Suli Sorrow.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to uplift, if you're reading the slides on the packet, it's page 91. Just want to lift up the partnership or the opportunity that was on the project in the Washington neighborhood. It's not in my district, but it's adjacent, where it's a highly disadvantaged community with more recently just high levels of violent crimes to pedestrians honestly being hit by cars on a regular basis. Almost every other day we're hearing about pedestrian being hit by a car. And so this has helped with the neighborhood in terms of just making sure the residents feel that they're walking in a more welcoming and environment, but also, alerting to drivers as much as possible to be aware it's a highly dense area where there's a lot of walking. So I just want to look that up because it does make a big difference to have the art as much as there's some concern. But it really helps kind of uplift the spirits of residents where these are done in. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I assume, Mr. Sanchez, you do not wish to speak again. Okay, no one else in the room. I'm not, okay, I do see.
Yeah.
Brotman?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Daniel Brotman, you're up.
Yeah, I'm in Glendale, where we just implemented a quick build on North Brand Boulevard, kind of an iconic roadway in our city. I thought we had done some good outreach to the community, but apparently not as good as we could have, because there's been kind of a huge uproar over the project. I think a lot of that is lack of understanding of what a quick build demonstration project is all about, or kind of lack of communication around the safety features and the broader rationale. So I don't know. I think it's a bit of a lesson for how we prepare for these. I did watch the presentation about the I think it was on Shattuck Avenue in LA, what they did there. It seems like they did it right. And anything that we can learn for future projects, or any of the other cities can learn about how you get this right, so that when it does go in, you don't get kind of this this uprising. I think it will tampen down. I think there's some things that we could tweak, and that was the point of a demonstration project. So I think in the end we'll get there, but we're going through a lot of pain in the meantime.
Thank you for your comments, Committee Member Brotman. I'm not seeing anyone else at this time. Okay, very good. I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, can you state your name?
Steve Manos, second.
So Salache first, man of second. You got that, Ruben? You got that?
I
Good.
said
All
my
right,
name
let's
after
go.
the attorney looked at me, so.
Let's go to, and let's note these things when they make the motion. We start tracking this. Okay, all righty. Very good. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. That's one on you, Salache.
Don't worry, the attorney was looking at me, so I got it.
Brian Bergson,
Yes.
Russell Betts,
Betts, yes.
Daniel Brotman,
Robin, yes.
Art Brown,
Aye.
Jeanette Burns, Ross Chun, Denise Delgado, Andrew Doe, Jonathan Dumitru,
Yes.
John Dutrey,
Yes.
James Gaisley,
Aye.
Jason Gibbs,
Aye.
Kurt Hagman,
Hagman, aye.
Laura Hernandez,
Hernandez, aye.
Lauren Hughes Leslie.
Hughes Leslie, yes.
Thank you. Heather Hutt, Mike Judge,
Judge, yes.
Fred Jung, Trish Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. Received for Jung and Kelly. Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis.
Lewis,
Malcolm
yes.
Lilly. Thank you. Received for Lewis. Malcolm Lilienthal,
Yes.
Richard Loa, Clint Lowermore,
Aye.
Ken Mann.
Ken Man, yes.
Thank you. Steve Manos,
Aye.
Ray Marquez,
Yes.
Larry McCallan,
Yes.
Marcia McLean,
Yes.
Linda Molina,
Molina, yes.
Carol Moore, Juan Munoz,
Munoz, yes.
Ara Najarian, Maria Navafroli,
Aye.
Frank Navarro,
Yes.
Sharona.
Navarro,
Thank you.
yes.
Received. Thank you. Sharona Nazarian,
Nazarian, yes.
Gil Rebelar. Is that a vote for Rebelar? Ed Reese.
Reese, yes.
Thank you. Received. Celeste Rodriguez,
Yes.
Crystal Ruiz, Ali Saleh.
Yes, Solis.
Thank you. Steve Sanchez,
Sanchez, aye.
Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Suli Sorrow,
Sorrow, I.
Alexis just.
Marty Siminoff,
Yes.
Ward Smith, Jose Luis Solache,
Yes.
Wes Speak,
Aye.
Karen Spiegel,
Spiegel, yes.
Cynthia Sternquist,
Yes.
Michael Vargas,
Yes.
Scott Voigts, Donald Wagner,
Wagner, aye.
Colleen Wallace,
Wallace, yes.
Alan Wapner,
Yes.
Thomas Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 44 in favor and 0 against.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 10, 2023 to 2026 CRP CMAC STBG project selection and award recommendations. Warren Whitaker, Partner Manager, Integrated Planning and Programming. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair and TC members. As the Chair indicated, I'm Warren Whitaker. I'm the Manager of Integrated Planning and Programming. And I am here this morning to seek TC action to recommend that the Regional Council approve the 2023 through 2026 CRP, CMAC, SDBG project award list and contingency list, and authorize the SCAG Executive Director or his designee to make programming adjustments as necessary. Now that I've got that mouthful of the ask out, I'm going to provide some context before getting to the actual recommendation. All right. So first, a little bit of a primer on the federal funding sources addressed in the recommendation. CMAQ dollars are intended to fund transportation projects or programs that reduce congestion and improve air quality for areas that do not meet the national ambient air quality standards for criteria air pollutants. And essentially what that is are ozone precursors like NOx or volatile organic chemicals, or the various forms of particulate matter like PM10 or PM2.5 that you may be more familiar with. The Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG program, provides flexible funding to address state and local transportation needs. STBG is the most flexible funding source of the three here. CRP dollars are intended to fund projects that decrease transportation emissions, which is defined as carbon dioxide emissions that result from on-road highway sources. Combined, the SCAG region's apportionment of these three federal funding sources amount to roughly $540 to $630 million a year. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. Doing some quick mental math, I'm sure that you've all determined that this call for projects is only a portion of our typical apportionment. Next, let's take a look at how we got here and then what happens next. So if we extended this graphic way out to the left, my arm can't stretch that far, we would have call outs for the county transportation commissions selecting projects using these federal fund sources for the last 3 decades. Technically, CRP, or the Carbon Reduction Program, is a new program under IJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bipartisan infrastructure bill, whatever you want to call it. But the point remains the same. Likewise, the Surface Transportation Block Grant, it's known by a bunch of different aliases over the years. It's essentially the same program. Under the federal corrective action issued to both California and the SCAG region, the county transportation made the decisions on, I won't read my note because my note is confusing to myself. With the corrective action issued to California and the SCAG region, where the county transportation commissions had historically selected projects using these fund sources, now SCAG needs to select those. And so you'll recall earlier in these, that this gets into get us back on the slide with our compliance action plan and essentially addressing the corrective action and getting the approval from Caltrans and the feds that yes, we have addressed that corrective action. You know, the key part of that was developing the program guidelines. You guys saw the program guidelines for STBG and CMAQ, and then we went to the EAC on the CRP program guidelines, primarily because both the policy committees and RC were dark in December at that, and we needed to get those program guidelines approved so that we could issue the call earlier this year in January. And as you can see, we had the call open from January through March, and then SCAG staff turned around and did our evaluation in April and May. And today we're here to seek the approval on the award recommendations. Following your and the regional council's action today, we'll be working with the awardees to get their projects programmed in the FTIP, as Augustine kind of provide the high level explanation of what the FTIP is. And then we will work with them to get the projects obligated by the federal agencies. So the next 2 slides go into the scoring criteria, which we looked at each one of the projects that were submitted. It's important to note that each applicant was required to select a preferred funding source within the application. All project applications were scored by a 5-person panel based on the criteria outlined in the guidelines for the funding source requested in the application. Here are the scoring criteria for CMAQ SDBG. And you'll notice there's a little nuance there that essentially they're identical for the two, with the difference being with CMAQ, we're evaluating for air quality, which makes sense. And a slightly different, but pretty similar set of scoring criteria for the carbon reduction program. Scores were then translated into SCAG ranking of highly recommended, recommended, contingency, or not recommended based on the scoring thresholds that are in the guidelines and illustrated in the table here. To achieve programmatic investment thresholds and ensure a balanced program of projects, SCAG staff adjusted project prioritization based on the following factors: ensuring that at least 40% of funding positively benefit priority equity communities, county targets, relative funding availability, and overall program balancing for a variety of project types, equitable investments, and regional diversity. All projects with a ranking of highly recommended, recommended, and contingency list that did not receive funding due to insufficient funds will be placed on the contingency list. Contingency list projects will be awarded as funding becomes available. For example, due to awarded projects' inability to deliver within the obligation timeline, or due to an increase in apportionments available to the region, we'll be able to move one of those projects that are on the contingency list but don't currently awarded for funding. We'll be able to add money to that project and then get it programmed in the FTIP. Available funding will be prioritized for partially funded projects and projects on the contingency list with a highly recommended ranking. And then we'll kind of follow it down from there. Projects that receive a not recommended ranking are not considered SCAG selected and must reapply in a future call to be considered for these federal fund source. So this then goes back a little bit to that corrective action, the importance of projects being selected by SCAG. Here you can see the number of applications submitted, recommended for full or partial funding award, recommended for contingency list, and not recommended. Awards were distributed to the highest ranked projects within each county. SCAG staff then tried to honor the fund source requested for the application when possible. In the event of insufficient funding, projects were considered for other eligible funding sources. This slide shows the distribution of recommended funding award by fund source across counties. Again, we tried to honor the funding source requested in the application. We also needed to do some level of shifting around of dollars due to the project eligibility and funding availability. The next several slides break down the recommendation to the county level. Up first is Imperial County. We're recommending that most of the projects from Imperial County be funded, with 2 projects added to the contingency list. LA County spans 2 slides. Here are the projects recommended for funding award. And here are the projects recommended for contingency list and not recommended. Again, recall that projects on the contingency list are still considered SCAG selected and therefore eligible to be programmed with CMAQ, SDBG, and/or CRP if funding becomes available. Projects with a ranking of not recommended are not considered SCAG selected and would need to apply in subsequent call for project nominations to be eligible for these federal fund sources. Heading south to Orange County, again, 2 slides for Orange County. Here are the projects recommended for funding award and part of the projects recommended for the contingency list. And here are the balance of projects, Orange County projects recommended for a contingency list, and the one project not recommended based on its score. One slide for Riverside County. And so you'll notice a couple of things here. It's a very complicated game of federal funding Tetris. SCAG is recommending essentially to swap what might otherwise be the CMAQ funds that we would have looked towards, likely going to Riverside County with surface transportation block grant and funding to provide flexibility for the highest scoring projects within Riverside County. Several of the highest scoring projects within the county are either ineligible or include components that are ineligible for CMAQ or CRP funding. Hence, that's why we did that funding swap. You can also note that we included several partial funding given the funding request and the funding dollar amount available. For San Bernardino County, again, a single slide. All of the projects submitted were recommended for funding. This is due in part to most of these projects seeking CRP funds, which I don't know if it's ironic or not, or just is the way it is. They tended to be less competitive than SDBG or CMAQ. And last, and definitely not least, Ventura County, again, one slide, and all projects submitted are recommended for at least partial funding. All right, next steps. Upon TC and RC approval today, awardees may begin programming the SCAG selected projects into the FTIP and begin the obligation process with Caltrans local assistance. All funds within this call must obligate no later than September 30th, 2029. SCAG anticipates the next call for project nominations will be next calendar year in 2025 and includes something on the order of magnitude of $1 billion. That's with a B, 1 billion. That's 2 years of funding. And clearly, we will be back with additional details and updates. That's a lot of money, and we want to make as many projects in the queue for those funding when they become available. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Staff is available to address questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Not seeing any. We'll start with you, Mr. Betts, and then we'll go over to you, Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The previous agenda item was a call for projects, and this one is awarding them. And sit up here for many years, and you'll watch other cities or regions get awards, and you don't. You go, okay, well, maybe it's our turn. And so this time I'm just speaking because we have both situations going on. The one that's of most note to us would be the funding through CVAG, which I represent here. It's a long list of benefits to this project. And I don't want to go into them because it's so much time, but also I'm in the city of Desert Hot Springs, and this one project here is going to make such a huge difference for our residents in access to a hospital, services, and it's just so. There's one on this list that's really good. Don't take it off, and we're real happy. The other one,
Can you tell us the name of that one, Mr. Betts?
No, not if you can take it off. It's, I need 2 pairs of glasses to read this writing here. Coachella Valley Association of Governments. It's highly recommended for addressing climate change emergencies and sandstorm. The other one on here, just take a minute more. I just want to share with the committee here. There's a Sunline program, Sunline Transit Agency where I serve, and we started up a program called Sunride. And this is providing first mile, last mile. And to me, the impediment to using public transportation has always been, what do you do once you get there? And, how am I going to get around? And this Sunride is a program where they get into a van type thing that will take them to the mainline bus route. And it's really taken off in popularity in our city. In fact, to the point where it's now being very used, and it's increasing the ridership on the main Sunline routes. So rather than having to take a long walk home from a bus stop, this will get you from the bus stop to that long walk. So we'll probably apply for that one the next time. Anyhow, I just didn't want to let the moment pass without giving a few words on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kurt Hagman.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to kind of go over, this is going to be the standard for this kind of process going on before. Can you kind of explain what the process was before this?
So it depended a little bit on each county transportation commission. So I'll use two kind of geographically diverse regions as examples. So both Ventura County and Imperial County both did somewhat similar call for projects for these federal fund sources. Others, they may have done some kind of mix. We can't really say what they did for CRP because CRP didn't exist before. And then some counties, like LA County, did actually do some sub-allocation of their surface transportation block grants. We got our hands slapped, well, not just us, but the entire state and other states, in fact, as well, for actually sub-allocating those dollars because that's not allowed. They have to be competitively selected. So that's kind of a breadth of what those might be, some kind of mix of those.
My point is, this used to be handled at the transportation
Yes, sir.
regional area. This is now elevated to SCAG's preview the whole time. And the funds were, lack of a better word, formula fed by population, by what in each region before?
Yes, generally it's a combination of population. And so then like on CMAQ, it has to do with how severe the air quality elements are. So it's a combination of severity and population. And then on SDBG, it has to do with lane miles and population.
So as regional dollars go to a region, generally county specific, or?
So we cannot sub-allocate it to a county. It's needs
Really
to be
region.
competitive at the regional level.
So that, I think that's important for the members to realize. It used to be our transportation authority gets these dollars and we used to program that out at that level based on our priorities there at a local level. This is a big change in policy that is now bringing it up to a MPO level because it's federal dollars that may not be getting your fair share like you used to because it's going to be on competitiveness across a region now. So I know that our staff here at SCAG will be working with our regional transportation members, but it's going to be a different type of thing going on for this type of funding, right, Coleman?
Yeah, real quickly, Mr. President, I think that's a really important question you raise. For the last, 20, 30 years, state law had mandated that monies go directly to the regional, to the sub-regional, to the CTCs, to the county commissions. And each one, like Warren just said, each one then decided how they would allocate it, which was not, we found out was not per federal requirement. And so we had this corrective action by the federal government that said we were doing it wrong in California. And so they gave us time to correct it. And so that corrective action is what we are now implementing. And so this first outcome that you see is really short fused because we needed to get this out in the time that we had. You would see a more consistent approach in the next cycles that have even more resources. But the regional, the requirement of the federal rules is the MPO is who makes the decision. That's you all make the decision on this project. And it has to be selected and programmed at the MPO level.
So that's why I'm kind of pointing out to our members here, what used to be done, in my case, SBCTA, we could count that funding for last year, pretty much what was going to come next year, come the year after, and program multi-years out. Hey, we'll just get this funding, we'll program this in now. Now it's a completely different game. It is done at the SCAG level for the SCAG region. It means your transportation authorities may or may not be eligible for funding on years coming out. So it's going to be them working with SCAG staff to really put the best case forward for the regional transportation. On the good side, which is scary for if you're on your hat says your regional transportation commission, but for things like for my home city that's been fighting for those transitions between counties that may not get the most attention because, well, Riverside doesn't want to spend money for people coming from San Bernardino going to 91, for example, or LA spending on the 57 to go Those now will be looked holistically as a region for submittal. What is the best need for our residents as a SCAG region? Which is a big change after 30, 40 years of doing it a different way. So it's really kind of been up, and I'm looking forward to our team's or SCAG staff presentation to the regional transportation committees. How do we work together and find out what those needs are as a region?
And really inherent in this process is working with each county commission and all of them collectively. So what you see here is a lot of interaction with the county commissions to get to this point. So there's a lot of input that we still required to get from each county commission to get to this point. So you would see the recommendations come from them. They have scoring that they also go through, but the decision on what gets selected at the end is at the MPO level. And that's what you're looking at today.
And I would say that Sandab, it's probably not changing much because they're one region, one county. San Diego, they're just doing on their MPO level down there. But I think it's something that we talked about, and I don't want to digress from it in this, but data is going to be important for us to collect as a region now. You know, what is those transportation flows? Where are those things going? How do we work as a region together? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go with Colleen Wallace first and then Steve Sanchez.
Well, I just want to say thank you for doing highly recommended for banning. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for your brief comment. Okay, let's go ahead. Steve Sanchez.
I don't know how I can top that. Oh, man. Quick question for staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the Riverside County award summary, and in the Riverside County, the Interstate 10 and Monroe Street interchange. It says SCAG ranking is highly recommended, yet it's on the contingency list. And yeah, obviously, I'm in the city of La Quinta, and the city of Indio is our sister city next door. That Monroe Street interchange is extremely important to that Eastern Coachella Valley. I think you all know, besides Coachella Fest and Stagecoach, and the city of Indio is the largest population in the Coachella Valley. So it's a really important area for our region. Just, how can we bump them up? Or how is it that it's a highly recommended and it's on the contingency list, and there are other projects that I would say are just recommended or partially funded or fully funded? What happened there, I guess?
So some of it has to do with the color of funds. And as one of my colleagues from way back said, before they got into transportation, they thought all funds were green. When you're especially in the transportation programming side, we talk about color of funds quite a bit and the different. So recall back when I was talking about the carbon reduction program, right, and it was less competitive. Like if you were a good betting person and you had the insight, you would have gone for a CRP project, assuming your project was eligible, because that was your kind of the least competition for it. So that's part of it, is what is the competition? And then it's, frankly, we ran out of funds to be able to fund all of the priority projects. And that's why you have those highly recommended. And that's in part when we developed the program guidelines with Caltrans, with the federal agencies, and with the county transportation commissions. How did we set up a process so that not only are we selecting projects to be funded, but that we have projects in the queue? So if additional funding becomes available, either because a project drops off or because additional, starts raining money, we can get new projects in the queue and get them funded right away. We don't have to go back, do another call to get them in the queue. They're already in the queue. We can just move them forward. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So there's an opportunity if money comes available before the next call, which I talked about in 2025. There's also the opportunity to come back and go through that next call. So if you're on the contingency list, you didn't get there, we'll have a lot more money come next year to be able to do that. We're only addressing kind of an increment of the funding, and this is actually funds that were mainly already programmed by the county transportation commissions between federal fiscal year 23 and 26. So this is kind of like, we're fighting over the leftovers right now. Got it. So we're trying to figure out how to make you all as competitive as possible for those dollars. And so whether it's these, or if there's other programs like are coming through IJA, and if you get those notifications from USDOT. It seems like there's money being released every other day for that. So some of it is like, how do you get kind of proficient and ready to be competitive for those federal sources? So some of it is the application side, and we're also trying to make the applications much easier. So whether you have super sophisticated staff or you have the one program engineer, and they're trying to balance everything else, that those projects can compete at the same level. We're trying to have a good basis so that everyone can compete effectively.
So it's the type of funding that was sought after, right?
Yeah. So particularly on the interchange side, anything that's not specifically like an air quality element, so likely like transit projects or active transportation, most of like the capacity projects have to come under the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. Because it's so flexible, everybody wants it.
Okay.
And a lot of times, so like at the County Transportation Commission level, a lot of times they would look at CMAQ dollars, and then they would try to program all of those out first because those are the most restrictive, and try to tie up those dollars on the projects. But then they'll have to do things, and you'll see it in the project list, that there'll be projects where it's a combo because it's an active transportation project, but they also have to do some maintenance on that project as well.
Sure.
And that's not eligible for CMAQ. So then you have to throw in some SDBG dollars in order to cover that element. So then that's where that like complicated Tetris game that we end up playing kind of comes into play.
And how long does this application last for then?
So that's when I was talking about 2025, we're doing the next call.
Right.
So we're really targeting, just making sure that Comey is not correcting me. He's coming over my shoulder here. I'm talking about, $1 billion a year. I'm afraid I'm going to get a hook. We're talking every odd year that we'd be doing this. So 2025, 2027, essentially trying to program out 2 years at about, 500 to 600 million a year. That's where the $1 billion, $1.2 billion kind of comes into play.
So if it starts raining money and
funds
come in, then you can just take them there. And then just another question, because I'm a new guy here, and this is my first meeting. What exactly is priority equity communities? What is that defined as? And then what is equitable investments and
priority equity communities is a convention that SCAG is used to identify what are, whether you call it disadvantaged communities. We had a former SCAG president, I think, what was it like, opportunity areas? I think that was the nomenclature that she is trying to look at some of our members that remember. CalEnviro Screen, Justice 40, which is the USDOT's. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can look at. And so what SCAG tried to do is look at all of this diversity of ways of identifying how do you, what are priority equity communities? What are the attributes? What makes sense for our region? And we tried to pull all of those together and do the one that made the most sense for our region.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So let's go with Soy Sarl.
Yes, hi, thanks for the presentation. So I have a question about LA County region. I do appreciate that we have lists of bigger cities who are able to get their project highly recommended on the list. But I think that's why we have crucial, entity like the gateway cities, right? So Gateway COG is the representative for, Long Beach and Southeast LA cities. So I'm wondering, I do see some COGs who were able to apply, and I'm just wondering, I didn't see many of the smaller cities get funding, and I don't know how engaged the Gateway COG was to ensuring that they were representing or advocating for our Southeast LA cities.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is this was a really fast pace, considering like this was a kind of a small pot of funding. Well, relatively speaking, 300 million is not a small pot. Comey would definitely hook me on that one. But because we were trying to get it out so quickly, because it's going back to federal fiscal year 23 dollars. through 2026. We're trying to get these dollars out there so that they can get to real projects and they can obligate them. So it was a real rapid pace. And then Metro, in trying to do their engagement with the sub-regional COGs within LA County, didn't have a elongated engagement process to do that. They had a couple of opportunities to engage, both at TAC and then reaching out to the COGs themselves. It's documented in the staff report, kind of the highlights on there. Going forward, because we are going to be talking, roughly $1 billion every call, not only are we also continuing to rely on the county transportation commissions to do outreach, but clearly SCAG has a big role in that, and not just in the outreach on those calls, but also on like the skill set. We've already been in conversations with Caltrans and especially Caltrans local assistance. How do we get the training out there so that once you're awarded these funds, my agency's never received federal funds before. What the heck do I do first? What do I do next? How much should I be applying for? What is that threshold? Which it makes sense because I have to do so much additional paperwork because it's a federally funded project that if it's not at least that, I'm going to be spending more on admin costs than it's worth, those programs are worth. So there's a lot of additional background stuff that we're also going to be trying to, like human capital development that we're also doing with this as kind of a side to the call.
I think that would be great, and coordination amongst the Gateway for educational opportunities for the city so that they're aware and probably missed it before they even heard about it. I get fast paced, but that's the reason why some regions are left out time and time. So just wanted to just share that and hope we can figure out opportunities for education and notice ahead of time if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any of the hands in the room, so we will go to Daniel Brotman.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a question about the SR 91 project, and I'm new to this, so I apologize if this is something that's been discussed before, but I understand that's a freeway widening project, and I'm wondering, well, I guess I'm just surprised in this day and age that we're doing freeway widenings given the position of the state and CARB discouraging those. What was the VMT analysis or GHG analysis on that?
So before I get into that component, I just wanted to say a little bit about that project. Yes, sir. It is a widening project.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks. That was a little distracting. So it's a widening project on the 91. It's just east of the 710. What happens at that point, there's actually a lane drop when you're doing the transition from the 710 into the 91. So it's primarily a safety and an operational issue. As anyone who knows that drives that section of either the 710 or the 91, it's a big freight corridor. In fact, it's already received funding from the California Transportation Commission under the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, which is a freight funding program. This project is also programmed in the 2023 FTIP already. It's received, in addition to the TSEP funds, it's received LA County's Measure M funding program against that. Because it's in the 2023 FTIP, it was included in our transportation conformity analysis for the 2024 Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy, better known as Connect SoCal 2024. And because it was in there, it's also part of our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets under SB 375. So it is, part of everything else within the plan. It is an integral component of the plan. And largely because it's a safety and an operational issue, that is part of the reason why it scored so well.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and entertain a motion for this item.
Motion to approve.
I'm sorry. I had another part to that.
Mr. Brotman, we want to go ahead and move forward.
Betts, approve. A motion to approve.
We can't hear you, Mr. Brotman. Uh,
Corona, second.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go and do a roll call vote.
Brian Bergson,
Yes.
Russell Betts,
Aye.
Daniel Brockman.
I was still asking my question. I'm gonna be a no because of that freeway widening.
Thank you. Art Brown,
Aye.
Jeanette Burns, Ross Chan, Denise Delgado, Andrew Doe, Jonathan Dumitru,
Yes.
John Dutre,
Yes.
James Gaisley, Jason Gibbs, Kurt Hagman, Laura Hernandez,
Hernandez, aye.
Lauren Hughes Leslie,
Hughes Leslie, yes.
Heather Hutt, Mike Judge,
Judge, aye.
Fred Jung,
Fred Jung, aye.
Trish Kelly,
Yes.
Linda Krupa,
Yes.
Bridget Lewis.
Bridget Lewis, aye.
Thank you. Received. Malcolm Lilienthal,
Aye.
Richard Loa, Clint Lowermore,
Aye.
Ken Mann,
Ken Ben, yes.
Steve Manos,
Aye.
Ray Marquez,
Yes.
Larry McCallan,
Yes.
Marcia McLean, Tim McOsker,
Yes.
Linda Molina,
Molina, yes.
Carol Moore, Juan Munoz,
Munoz, yes.
Ara Najarian, Maria Nava Frolik,
Yes.
Frank Navarro,
Yes.
Sharona Nazarian,
Nazarian, yes.
Gil Rebelar, Ed Reese,
Yes.
Celeste Rodriguez,
Yes.
Crystal Ruiz,
Yes.
Ali Saleh, Steve Sanchez,
Steve Sanchez, aye.
Tim Sandoval,
Yes.
Suli Sorrow,
Sorrow, aye.
Marty Siminoff,
Yes.
Ward Smith, Jose Luis Solache,
Yes.
Wes Speak, Karen Spiegel,
Spiegel, yes.
Cynthia Sternquist, Michael Vargas, Scott Boytz, Donald Wagner,
Wagner, aye.
thank you, Colleen Wallace,
Wallace, yes.
Alan Wapner,
Yes.
Thomas Wong.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes 38 in favor and 1 against.
Very good, thank you. So our next two items are information items. Agenda item 11 is an update on U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's proposed action on South Coast Air Quality Management District's plan to meet the 1997 ozone standard. And Sarah Jepson, our Chief Planning Officer, here to present.
Good morning, Chair Sandoval and members of the Transportation Committee. I am pleased to be here today to introduce Dr. Sarah Reese, who is the Deputy Executive Officer of the South Coast Air Quality Management District, or AQMD, who's going to be providing a very timely update today on the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's proposed action on the AQMD's plan to meet the 1997 Federal Ozone Air Quality Standard. The EPA has proposed a disapproval of this AQMD plan, which is would be a significant challenge and issue for our region. If finalized as proposed, The EPA action could ultimately lead to the imposition of highway sanctions in the South Coast region, impacting tens of billions of dollars in projects, many of those we just talked about earlier, that are important for this region and our economy and jobs throughout Southern California. As noted in the staff report, SCAG leadership has been actively involved in addressing this issue, working with the AQMD and our other state and federal partners. And before her presentation today, I just want to give a big thanks to Dr. Sarah Reese and her team for their close collaboration and working with us as we address this proposed disapproval together. And with that, I will hand it off to Dr. Reese.
Thank you.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me and can you see my slides?
We can hear you, cannot see your slides yet. There they are.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Great. So good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Sarah Reese. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for Planning, Rule Development, and Implementation at South Coast. And I'm going to give you an overview of the action that Sarah Jepson teed up for me. So just a quick overview, and then I'll get into some more details. We are required under federal law to develop plans to meet federal air quality standards, basically show how you're going to be able to meet these standards by the timelines outlined in the Clean Air Act. And EPA recently proposed disapproving part of our plan to meet the 1997 ozone standard. As Sarah mentioned, if EPA proceeds with finalizing this proposed disapproval without any changes, 18 months later, we're going to start facing sanctions. We'll have sanctions regarding permitting, making it harder to permit new and modified sources, as well as ultimately getting into federal highway fund sanctions and a federal takeover of air quality planning. The reason EPA disapproved this plan is due to their rejection of our proposal that the federal government step up and take responsibility for the emissions that are solely under their control. The amount of emission reductions we need to be able to meet federal air quality standards are massive. And most of those emissions are out of our reach from a regulatory authority perspective. These are really sources that are subject to federal authority. And in fact, state and local agencies are preempted from regulating these directly. Okay, I'll dive into a bit more of the background now. Under the Clean Air Act, EPA sets multiple air quality standards. These standards are health-based, and state and local agencies are required to be able to meet those standards by the timelines outlined under the Clean Air Act. Back in 2017, South Coast and CARB submitted a plan to EPA showing how we were going to meet the 1997 ozone standard. It has an attainment date in 2023. And the key pollutant that we need to control to be able to meet that standard is oxides of nitrogen, or NOx. This is an air pollutant that's formed from combustion. And over 80% of our NOx in our region is coming from mobile sources. Our plan relied on flexibilities that are allowed under the Clean Air Act regarding future actions. So when you're in an area that fails to attain and needs so many emission reductions, the Clean Air Act recognizes that there could be new technologies developed in the future that will help be able to reduce those emissions. So it allows you to point to that. These are called black box measures because we're not being very specific about how we're going to get those emission reductions. But at some point, you have to true that up. At some point, you have to show how you're going to get the emission reductions that you relied on in the black box. And so in 2019, South Coast and CARB developed the required plan showing how we were going to address those black box emissions. I just want to quickly go through the health effects of ozone. These are health-based standards, and while there are consequences under the Clean Air Act that are important, the biggest consequence in my mind are the public health impacts that we're facing as a result of failing to meet these standards. We estimate, ozone is a lung irritant. It has particularly detrimental effects on sensitive populations, including children. As they are growing and their lungs are developing, it can have a very detrimental impact on their lung capacity. And we estimate that if we attain air quality standards, we could avoid 1,600 premature deaths every year in our region. Monetizing those health impacts, that's more than $19 billion a year. So very, very consequential health impacts associated with this. I just want to look at the quick look at the trends of ozone in our region. This is sort of a good news and bad news story. On this chart, the red line is the levels of the 1-hour ozone standard, and then the blue line is the levels of the 8-hour ozone standard, and then the horizontal dashed lines are the levels of the standards themselves. And you can see that ozone has come down dramatically over the years. So that's the success story that we've seen largely as a result of our rules and the rules that CARB has been able to put on the books. But you can also see that these levels have leveled off over time. And with the leveling off, we're still way above these standards that we need to be able to meet. And in fact, we've had some levels go up a little bit in recent years, largely as a result of weather conditions that we've been facing. Talk a little bit about how important NOx is and the role of federal sources. Oxides of nitrogen, they are the most significant contributor to ozone. That is the air pollutant that we need to control to be able to reduce ozone levels. The chart on the upper left shows emissions from different sources over time. And these are sources that are controlled by different authorities. So for example, the yellow line is emissions from light and medium duty vehicles, and CARB largely has regulatory authority over those. You can see that those emissions have reduced very, very dramatically since 1997. Similarly, if you look at the green line, that's heavy duty vehicles and buses. Those are regulated by CARB, also by EPA. My CARB is largely on the in-state regulations, and we see that those are coming down as well. But I want to call your attention to the red line. Those are the sources that are subject to EPA authority. Those are the aircraft, ocean-going vessels, and trains. And we can see that that line is pretty stagnant and is in fact going up over time. And then when you look at the NOx emissions and break it down by who has regulatory authority for them, the sources that are subject to CARB and South Coast Authority, they have been reduced 70% since 1997. But the sources that are under EPA authority have only gone down 15% in the same time. And so that's part of the big part of the problem that we're facing is that we've taken all the emission reductions that are within our authority. We have nothing else to look at. We really need the federal government to reduce emissions in order for us to meet these standards. All right, this contingency measure plan, this is the action that EPA is proposing to disapprove. This was where we had to true up those black box emissions and show how we were going to get with specificity those emission reductions. Our proposed approach required all three agencies, so EPA, CARB, and South Coast, to step up more to reduce sources. Almost 2/3 of the emission reductions we needed were solely under federal authority. And we asked EPA to address these sources in our contingency measure plan. We basically put an outline together showing, what they could do for ocean-going vessels, what further they could do for trucks, etc. And there's precedent for EPA doing this. Back in the early 90s, when we faced a similar issue, EPA did acknowledge the role of federal sources and proposed taking on some of those assignments and working on that. At that point, there was a change in the Clean Air Act, so that issue kind of went away. And here we are 30 years later with facing the same issues over again. So the proposed action, EPA was required to take action on our contingency measure plan by July of 2021. That was a deadline under the Clean Air Act. They did not act in time, so we sued them in April of 2023. We had hoped that there would be a positive outcome. We wanted EPA to take action so that we could get on the path to be able to meet clean air standards and to protect our public. But unfortunately, in 2024 of this year, they proposed to disapprove that contingency measure plan. And they provided two reasons for that disapproval. One is kind of an administrative piece under kind of the Clean Air Act, but the one I want to draw your attention to is the substantive issue, that they said they saw no basis whatsoever to accept responsibility for reducing emissions from the sources that are under their authority. There's a couple of consequences that are mandated under the Clean Air Act. One type of consequence is a planning deficiency. So if you're required to submit a plan and EPA disapproves that plan or part of that plan, or if you're required to submit a plan and you fail to submit the plan, these are when some sanctions kick in. So the first sanction is 18 months after EPA makes that final finding of a deficiency. And those are the permitting hurdles that get impacted. It makes it a lot harder to permit sources within your area. The second sanction then is the prohibition on federal highway funding. And there's some exceptions for that for safety and transit projects. But again, it's tens of billions of dollars would be implicated in our region. And those attach 24 months after EPA makes its final finding. And then also a federal implementation plan, which is a federal takeover of air quality planning. The last time EPA looked at a federal implementation plan in our region, they had some pretty draconian measures in place. They were looking at things like caps on cargo volumes at our ports and limits on the number of air trips or airplane trips that could be taken at our airports, as well as no drive days. The second type of consequence under the Clean Air Act is if you fail to meet a standard by the date that's due in that's established by law. And this results in increased fees for our major permitted sources. So on top of everything else that they've done, being subject to the most stringent standards in the country, they now have to pay fees for the emissions that they produce. The other consequence that I think is very important is, of course, public health continues to be impacted if you're not meeting that standard. We still are suffering the consequences of poor air quality. All of these consequences will continue until a deficiency is resolved. And right now, EPA has not proposed any resolution that would get us out of this mess. And so that's why we're pretty concerned about the situation. Our response to EPA's proposed disapproval, the first thing we did was to ask for a 30-day extension of the comment period. EPA was proceeding very quickly with it, and so we did get that extension. You can see our comment letter and background materials. We have them available on our website at the link that's in this slide. But the key points that we made is that we really need the federal government to step up and take responsibility for those emission sources under its authority. We think this is consistent with what Congress intended under the Clean Air Act. We don't think there was ever any intent to put a state or a local agency in an impossible situation of never being able to meet federal ozone standards. We've seen that EPA has done that previously in the early 90s. And again, we have no other solution or way to get to clean air without federal action. In terms of next steps, we do think that there are paths forward that can avoid or minimize sanctions, and that we are willing to, and able to work with EPA and CARB to achieve this. At the end of the day, EPA is going to be on the hook for addressing these sources, because if they proceed with this disapproval and there's a federal implementation plan triggered, they're going to need to be able to do that planning and figure out where they're going to get the emission reductions. The only difference is whether they impose sanctions on us or not. We're going to continue to work with our stakeholders at EPA, and we're working very hard to figure out a path forward. Right now, EPA is expected to take final action on the contingency measure plan by July 31st of this year. That's a consent decree deadline, so it's a legal deadline that they have to meet. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll start off the discussion. What can we do here? What can this body do?
I think, certainly raising a profile of this issue, making sure people understand the issue at stake and the concerns that it raises. From staff level, we work closely with SCAG's staff so that we can all keep in the loop and make sure that we're doing everything we can. Again, from South Coast perspective, we've been working very, very hard with CARB and also EPA staff to come up with different pathways forward. And we're cautiously optimistic that we have some solutions, but it's been many years trying to get EPA's attention on this issue and getting them to take action.
Thank you. I'm a little bit out of order. I need to ask if there's any members of the public who wish to speak. Are there any? Not seeing any. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Larry McKellen?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As South Coast Air Quality Management District Governing Board member, one of several on this committee, and also the Air District Representative to SCAG, I just wanted to thank Sarah for doing a great job in explaining a very complex issue and I wanted to say also that the governing board is very cognizant of the issues and working very hard to help resolve them with the EPA. So as Sarah said, the best thing that we can do is help raise this issue to our congressional delegations and so on, and keep the pressure on EPA. My personal discussions with various congressmen is that if push comes to shove, Congress will act, and probably we won't have sanctions, especially loss of our federal monies. But who knows? Stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Larry. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tim McCosker and then Jose Salachi.
Thank you very much, Tim McCosker. I appreciate this report. I'm curious to know how this negotiation, this work on the 1997 ozone standard and trying to meet it, and the litigation going back and forth, how does that affect the ongoing efforts for AQMD on the indirect source rules for trains, which I think is underway now, and then for ports and terminals, which I think is coming at the end of the year? I would imagine they all fold together, but how does what's happening today impact our ability, AQMD's ability to move forward with trains and then with ports?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So under the Clean Air Act, we have an obligation to take all feasible measures, and the measures that we have on trains and ports, those indirect source rules, those are part of the obligations that we committed to in earlier Clean Air Act plans that we submitted to EPA. So we're still, those measures won't get us to attainment, but they'll help, and they'll be part of us showing that we've done our share and taken all of those feasible measures. So it's an important piece that we were able to show that we've done everything possible within our power, and then show EPA what they need to do is likewise to step up. So we're in rulemaking now, and we're continuing with those actions.
Thank you very much. Can I have a follow-up? Won't the same arguments that the AQMD has with EPA on these sources that are subject to federal regulation pertain to ports and terminal operators who say, great, we appreciate the rule, but for us to regulate the engines of ships coming across the ocean, they're either under federal control or outside of federal control under international control? Well,
right.
aren't the same arguments that
Like
AQMD makes to the feds?
Our indirect source rules are facilitating measures. So we recognize the bounds of our regulatory authority. It is indirect authority. And so we leverage what we can. We do need the federal government if we're going to take action, if we're going to get substantial emission reductions from things like ocean-going vessels, because those are directly within federal government control.
Great. Thank you so much.
Jose Salachi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Sarah, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, I join Larry's words as a member of the governing board as well. I'm part of the AQMD board. And to first acknowledge our chair's question, SCAG definitely has an overlapping relationship with AQMD. And most recently, several of us that are here in this committee were in DC, and we did meet with EPA, and Coleman did a great job to voice the concerns and the advocacy on behalf of SCAG that overlap with some of the AQMD work. So definitely the partnership is there. And I want to just reiterate that that partnership is critical, so that we could be that unified voice, so that we are really at the mercy of EPA at this point. I did want Sarah to highlight what these sanctions look like and what they look like for us. I know specifically after July 31st, there's a clock that starts if they were to do nothing. So if Sarah could just highlight that part, because I think I want to amplify that to all our communities, because this will definitely have a huge impact to our roads, to our freeways, and essentially, the funding that comes to us as a region. So if Sarah could just highlight that. Obviously, I know the answer, but I wanted just for the public to know what those sanctions look like to our communities. Thank you.
Sure. So, if EPA proceeds with their final disapproval by the 31st of July, which is what they're currently subject to do by consent decree, 18 months after that, that's when the permitting sanctions hit. And so that's when it starts to get very difficult to permit new or modified sources in our region. And then 24 months after that, or by end of July 2026, that's when the federal highways fund sanctions hit, as well as the federal implementation plan or federal takeover of planning. So that's a relatively short time frame for fairly substantial actions to take effect.
Thank you, sir. And again, just we're all hands on deck on behalf of SCAG and obviously AQMD to do our part so that we could be that collective voice and ensuring that we are working with EPA as they go through this process. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you as well. Okay. Oh, Kurt Hagman.
My other two board members from AQMD spoke, so I guess I got to do it too. But thank you again, Sarah, for the presentation. I think for us to realize too, we're kind of fairly unique. There's only a few regions in the United States that have this problem that we do. It's not because our standards aren't the best, because we have the best standards anywhere, but we are geographically challenged, to say the least, with our mountains that surround the basin. And if our warm, sunny skies every day does not allow the air to be cleared out and cleaned as fast as most other places in the United States. So that's a big component of what we do. We have the highest standards on everything right now, of everything we have control. And our argument to EPA, which you have to realize from a federal standpoint, if you change the rules for it to help Southern California, those rules affect the entire country. So when you say we're going to go to clean aircraft engines or clean locomotive trains on a federal level, most other places, and AKA most other congressional delegations, are saying, why are you adding this expense to us? And because we don't have that problem, just to help Southern California. So that's going to be the ongoing argument. Technology is advancing quickly. But at the same time, we're ways out before those things come into play for economical reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am not seeing anyone in the room or virtually. Okay, Dr. Reese, thank you for your presentation. We are all hoping this gets resolved soon. Thank you. Very good. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to agenda item 12, which is Highways to Boulevards Regional Study, and Hina Chanchlani, Associate Regional Planner, will be presenting. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Hina Chanchalani, and I'm an Associate Regional Planner at SCAG with the Transportation Planning Department. And I'll be providing a brief overview of the Highways to Boulevards Regional Study that initiated in November 2023. Quickly, just 1 second. Okay. And so SCAG received a federal earmark to conduct the study, and we kicked off work this past November. The study will identify opportunities to reconnect communities by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating transportation facilities such as highways or railways that have created barriers to community connectivity, and further Connect SoCal's vision for a more resilient and equitable future. So the study is in alignment with SCAG's work on its long-range plan, also called Connect SoCal. As you're aware, our vision for 2050 is a healthy, prosperous, accessible, and connected region for a more resilient and equitable future. The vision is supported by the goals that are outlined on this slide, namely mobility, communities, environment, and economy. And SCAG's Racial Equity Early Action Plan is also aligned with this work to address past actions that have created barriers for marginalized communities of color. So as mentioned earlier, SCAG received a federal earmark to conduct its own Highways to Boulevard study. There are now a handful of programs at the federal and state levels to support this type of work that are highlighted on the slide before you. The Reconnecting Communities pilot program offers $1 billion over the next 5 years in dedicated funding to restore community connectivity. And 2 rounds of the funding have already been expended, and there's 3 more rounds of funding that is available to the US, to California. And so with this regional study, we are aiming to identify areas to remove, retrofit, or mitigate the negative impacts of highways and railways through highways to boulevard conversions, freeway caps, and railroad conversions. On this slide, we have 6 goals for the study. 3 of them are more tangible goals that we expect to come out of this project. The 3 tangible goals are a set of identified locations for conversion or mitigation, developing a methodology to identify corridor locations or project locations, and positioning the region to compete for federal funding. The high-level goals include re-netting communities, lifting up priority equity communities by investing in them, and then improving safety and health. The work on this study will include reviewing existing conditions and all ongoing highways to boulevards, freeway caps, and railroad conversion efforts in the region, establishing a framework and set of metrics for the identification of potential corridors or potential projects for conversion or mitigation, identifying and evaluating projects in the region that are potentially viable candidates for future improvements, and finally, developing a guide to support local jurisdictions seeking to mitigate the negative impacts of highway or railway bifurcation. And of course, as we go forward, we will be engaging our stakeholders throughout the region, throughout the project lifecycle. And so to begin this work, we conducted a thorough review of all the regional plans by each county as shown on the slide. As we reviewed these plans, we evaluated whether they contained any projects that could be considered as part of the study. We also conducted a thorough review of Caltrans plans and programs, as well as Caltrans-led comprehensive multimodal corridor plans and active transportation plans. And we also looked at various other plans and programs that may have any alignment with this study. We have also looked at all the best practices and case studies throughout the nation, and a link for that is available in the staff report. There were 6 categories that represent the key takeaways from the best practices research. I won't go through them all, but one of them that I would like to highlight is thinking beyond highway and freeway caps, and providing context-sensitive solutions that are key. Again, the report can be found online on SCAG's website at a link, again, which is provided in the staff report. So our study includes a robust stakeholder engagement plan, which also includes reaching out and engaging with our CBO stakeholders. The Project Advisory Committee is a part of our larger outreach strategy, and we met, and our outreach will run through spring of 2025. We are meeting with our 2 project advisory committees, where the first is supporting the identification of projects across the SCAG region, and the second project advisory committee will be convened later this summer or early fall when we start developing conceptual designs for the recommended projects to move forward. And we'll also be conducting CBO engagement throughout the study, as I mentioned. The project team is informed by 2 project advisory committees, as I mentioned before. The first project advisory committee includes stakeholders from Caltrans, Council of Governments, County Transportation Commissions, and or other standing or local agency staff from cities and counties. And the project advisory 2 will comprise of staff that has projects within their jurisdictions. So we met with our PAC 1 members, which is the Project Advisory Committee 1 members, in January and May, and gathered their input and feedback on vision and goals, which became our guiding principles. And now we are seeking input on methodology, screening, and prioritization criteria. As the Project Advisory Committee has met twice, we have discussed and the committee members identified these themes as important factors in evaluating highways to boulevards projects based on our discussions and through feedback via surveys. These main themes serve as the project's guiding principles, which will inform our screening criteria and prioritization criteria, and we'll be continuing our work in early fall. Again, the guiding principles also fit into Connect SoCal's themes of mobility, communities, environment, and economy. And at our second project advisory committee meeting, the stakeholders informed us about the metrics and data for each of this guiding principle that is important for their jurisdictions, which we are currently reviewing. So a little bit about how we are gathering all the projects and screening projects. As mentioned earlier, we gathered a full list of projects through our reviews of various local plans and programs, and we also seeked input from our project advisory committee members who have participated at our project advisory meetings. And so after we gathered a full list of projects to consider, we will be screening these projects, and the screening will occur by simply running projects through these 3 criteria which are on the screen. Each of these 3 screens were identified as critical success factors. So a project within or adjacent to a project within or adjacent to disadvantaged community or priority equity community, a project located in an area with poor access to jobs, education, healthcare, food, and recreation. And lastly, if a project includes project elements that remove, retrofit, or mitigate highways or other transportation facilities that create barriers. These are informed by the USDOT Reconnecting Communities grant program. And our goal with the study is to make projects competitive for the federal Reconnecting Communities grant program. So the final step before conceptual design is to prioritize and move forward 6 to 10 projects. This will be done by using our guiding principles as we discussed earlier. Each of these categories of improvements will include different evaluation criteria, which will be used to prioritize projects. With that, I want to provide a quick recap of our timeline for this study, which is on the slide. We have completed our best practice plan and policy report, and it has been uploaded on SCAG's corridor planning website, which you can all take a look at. Our existing conditions assessment and prioritization framework and criteria will be complete by late this summer. Identification of 6 to 10 projects will occur by early fall, and we'll begin to prepare for conceptual designs by early next year. The ultimate goal of the study is to be completed by spring of 2025. And there will be various resources provided as part of this study, such as a local jurisdiction guide and a toolbox Tuesday training on this topic. And we'll also be following up with additional updates on final selection of projects at a future transportation committee meeting. For additional information, please visit the corridor planning page and website, and please do check out our best practice plan and policy report. And with that, I'll open it up for questions if we have additional time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Okay, not seeing any. I have Karen Spiegel. You're up.
Yes. How did you choose the plans that you reviewed? I know you've got one from each county, but how did you choose those plans? The reason I'm asking, I'll be more specific. You have Riverside County Long Range Plan. Now that's the county, and those county ones would be our unincorporated areas. Then we have RCTC, which is our Riverside County Transportation Commission, 2 separate plans with different things. Colleen, who's very interested in the disadvantaged communities, has that in her city, which wouldn't be covered in Riverside County plan. So how do you pick the plans? Because you've got 2 diverse plans.
So we assembled a project advisory committee, and the project advisory committee has various staff from various agencies. So we do have additional agencies from Riverside County who represent Riverside County at our project advisory committee. And so we've also done some additional outreach on additional plans and programs that we should be considering for each county. So this is not a complete list of the plans that we considered. There's also other plans that we've considered at local levels.
So if as I'm understanding what you're saying is, in your outreach, and you're going to find specific projects, is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay, so what if it's not one that you reviewed and there's a project that would be appropriate and not included?
So currently we're looking at our FTIP list, which is the Federal Transportation Improvement List, along with all the County Transportation Commission plans and programs, and also considering the Council of Governments plans and programs. And again, as I mentioned, we've done additional outreach for various plans. Again, this is not a complete list of projects. And the plans that we reviewed, we do have some additional plans that we've conducted reviews of. And so, yes, we are trying to ensure that we capture all the projects throughout our region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Not seeing any other, yes.
Sorry, don't want to prolong, but to Karen's question, I think what it is what I had a question out in the hall about the same thing. A lot of this stuff is coming up to our regional COGs or transportation authorities working with SCAD staff. So that's their working groups. So I think that's where we need to advocate at our local regional level. If we think there's projects to be on the list, and we need to have those discussions with our COG staff saying, hey, keep us in the loop of these opportunities. And so we can kind of weigh in on that local level. That comes up to the SCAG level. SCAG's there to help the regionals apply for the awards going forward.
Sometimes we don't know about advocating if we don't know what's going on. So that's kind of like which comes first. I mean, I'm constantly, and I'm sure other people in our counties are advocating for things, but if we don't know there's a review or a process or something going on to be looking for stuff, that we're not talking to the right people at the right times. That's all I'm saying.
And so if I can just add, we've conducted additional outreach at by providing presentations on this item at various COG meetings, COG planning committee meetings, and we've received several projects from the outreach that we've conducted. So we did conduct additional outreach for SBCTA, and we have been conducting additional outreach to inform project solicitation for this study.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that if committee members can email staff, obviously we don't want to overwhelm you, but if you can email staff, if you have a particular group that you want them to communicate with in reference to your comments, Ms. Spiegel, would be helpful to them as well. Very good. All right. I'm not seeing any of the hands, both here in the room and virtually. So thank you again for your presentation. We'll go ahead and move on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So Chair's report, please join me in welcoming new members to the Transportation Committee. Representing the Linwood Gatewood Cities COG, Juan Munoz Guevara. Welcome. Give him a hand. Yeah. We have Nikki Perez from Burbank, also serving on the Regional Council, representing District 42. Not here present, but we can certainly give her a hand. And Steve Sanchez from La Quinta, also serving on the Regional Council, District 66. Welcome, Mr. Sanchez. Want to give many thanks to the 800 plus attendees, esteemed speakers, panelists, members, partners, and sponsors who gathered in May for the 2024 Regional Conference and General Assembly. Local and regional leaders gathered to collaborate on fundamental issues such as mobility, housing and communities, the environment, and the economy following the adoption of Connect SoCal 2024, the long-term plan and vision for Southern California. At this time, I'll go over to our MetroLink report, immediate past president, Art Brown, if you'll report, anything to report at this time?
Yeah. MetroLink recently received a $1.3 million award from the U.S. Department of Transportation for the development and demonstration of a pioneering track intrusion detection system. In addition, grant funding from Congressman Brad Sherman, California District 32, an additional $1 million from his funds. The new system will be concentrated on a 1.5 mile stretch of the MetroLink's Ventura County line between Haskell Avenue and Van Nuys Boulevard in the city of Los Angeles. The prototype will explore the use of artificial intelligence with cameras, radar, and light detection and ranging sensors in connection with MetroLink's existing positive train control. With this system to identify and validate track intrusions. Also along those lines, MetroLink announced a cutting-edge smart crossing technology as a known as a wireless near-side stop system at Del Obispo Street crossing in San Juan Capistrano. The system will eliminate the ghost train phenomenon that has plagued San Juan Capistrano residents. That's where the train warning signals come down with the gates and there's nothing there. Funding was from a consolidated rail infrastructure safety improvement program to create better experience for drivers, pedestrians, while increasing safety for Metrolink passengers in the San Juan Capistrano community. We've also announced their $15 summer day pass. This promotion offers unlimited rides on Metrolink system on the day of the purchase. The summer pass is available on weekdays through Labor Day with exception to July 4th, when the Metrolink $10 holiday pass will be available. Metrolink will continue to offer the 10-day weekend day pass on Saturdays and Sundays throughout the summer. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, staff report, Annie?
Yes, I have a very brief staff report. As many of you may know, on May 30th, the legislative leadership in the State Assembly and State Senate announced the joint legislative budget plan. Thanks to the collective advocacy efforts of SCAG and our partners, the joint legislative budget plan restores funding for several programs cut under Governor Gavin Newsom's January budget proposal and May revision. Specifically, the joint legislative budget plan would reduce proposed cuts to the Regional Early Action Planning Program, REAP 2.0, from $300 million to $50 million, as well as protect the Active Transportation Program. So restoring funding to the REAP 2.0 program and protecting funding to the Active Transportation Program obviously aligns with the goals of Connect SoCal 2024 and are important resources for plan implementation. If this budget is approved, we hope to move forward with significant REAP suballocations and will continue engagement to essentially restart the program once the budget is finalized. And so we'll keep all of you posted on this matter. Let me also just briefly mention that we will be updating our committee outlook for the Transportation Committee after the EAC retreat at the end of this month. And then just as a reminder, I think several of the presentations made reference to us obviously being dark in July, but I also want to mention that the policy committees will be dark in August as well. And so we'll reconvene in September. Thank you.
Westbeek.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask specifically if the SB 125 funds were unfrozen. I've heard kind of two different things. One, they were still frozen, but spread over time. And I just wanted to see if you had any more information on that.
Unfortunately, I do not, but we can get back to you with a little more clarity on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any member announcements at this time? Okay, not seeing any. So anyone, thank you all for your participation. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great rest of your day.